Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next Beauty Made in Italy webinar. We are so fortunate to have Brett Schetzsle with us this morning, the president of ADE Imports Corporation and the founder of Vespucci Advisors. Some of you may remember Brett from our US Beauty Summit in September. He has been responsible for bringing over Acqua d'Elba here to the United States. So as always, please put all of your questions or any comments in the Q&A or the chat function on the control panel, and we will make sure they're addressed. If you have any questions or issues throughout the webinar, please either use the chat or Q&A functions, or you can email us at beautydesk.usa@iche.it, and we will take it over to Brett. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Meredith. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on from where it is you're joining us today. As Meredith mentioned, my name is Brett Schetzsle. I'm the president and founder of ADE Imports, and we're based in Beverly Farms, Massachusetts, which is just north of Boston along the coast. And today I'm very happy to share with you some of the things that we've learned over the last 4 years while planning and executing the launch of Acqua d'Elba in the United States. I hope these ideas will help you in putting together your own strategy for bringing your brand here, and perhaps present an alternative strategy that might be a faster and more profitable route to market and can serve as the engine to fuel your further growth into US retail. But to help tell that story, we've taken our inspiration today from the Italian explorers, financiers, and craftspeople who led the voyages, provisioned the fleets, and whose goods inspired the quest for new trade routes and helped put America on the map, both literally and figuratively. So as would have been customary at the time for an explorer arriving in a royal court, I'll present a few of my qualifications before we begin, just to give you a sense of why you should listen to me today. Though my marketing career with consumer beauty and grooming products began in Procter & Gamble's beauty division, working on brands such as Gillette, Old Spice, and Braun on global new product, consumer insight, and launch strategy projects. Following my time there, I spent several years working in product marketing with cloud-based software and service companies, helping to reposition their offerings to new audiences and bring new products to market. And then I was fortunate enough to be brought back into the world of beauty in 2016 to begin the work to launch Acqua d'Elba the following year. Earlier this year, ADE Imports began to expand its services for brands like yours to include e-commerce and launch strategy planning, as well as brand management consulting with the formation of Vespucci Advisors. And in the not too distant future, we'll be sharing more information about Bella Italia Beauty, an exciting e-commerce cooperative that we hope will be a great way for Italian brands to test the US market. So we begin our journey today in New York, where last month the Beauty Made in Italy team hosted the US Beauty Summit. And in his opening remarks, the trade commissioner spoke of the continued growth and love for Italian products in the United States and the strength of so many sectors here. But for sure, his guidance to the brands in attendance was to be prepared for a long and difficult journey to get here. And no doubt those early explorers returning from the New World would have given the same counsel to those who would follow them. And as much as theirs was a business of discovery and inspired by dreams of personal riches and fame, it could not be forgotten that they were first and foremost in the survival business, followed closely by the business of return on investment in the name of their financial backers, not a situation dissimilar from the one that many of you are in. So this brings us to Amerigo Vespucci and his relevance to today's presentation. And despite his name being the one chosen by map makers to go on this new continent that was been discovered, he's someone on whom the historical record is incredibly thin. But while his actual contributions to the discovery of new lands may merit some skepticism, the importance of his contributions to standardizing and modernizing navigational techniques and teaching the same things to new pilots, ostensibly to reduce the risk of assets being lost at sea and to find the fastest paths for goods to reach new markets are not in dispute. Ultimately, Vespucci's mandate from the King of Spain was to ensure that it was his fleets who understood best which were the most profitable routes across the Atlantic Ocean. And the purpose of today's webinar is to introduce you to a path to market that may be faster and more profitable than a typical beauty launch strategy that's focused first on achieving retail distribution. I was first introduced to Acqua dell'Elba in late 2015, and I made my first visit to Isola d'Elba the following summer. I didn't know anyone on the island. I certainly didn't know anyone involved with Acqua dell'Elba, but I arrived in the village of Marcina Marina and I introduced myself to one of the founders and told him that I was going to be his US distributor. It has been a long and strange journey since that time, but it has been one that I will never forget and for which I'm eternally grateful. And frankly, I can't figure out why Napoleon would have wanted to leave Elba, but I suppose that's a discussion for another day. So in our launch planning and the assumptions we use to bring the brand to market as its distributor, we initially believed that our direct-to-consumer business, that is to say our e-commerce business, would be secondary to retail. One of our central challenges was how do you introduce a fragrance to online shoppers in a new market if they don't have the opportunity to smell and experience the brand first? So we assumed that getting sampling, getting product into retail would be our best opportunity. But like a lot of those early explorers, our assumptions were not entirely correct. And so by the end of 2017, our launch phase was complete, but what we discovered was that the early growth in the business would not come from customers we found with typical beauty marketing programs, but from customers already waiting for the brand to arrive here in the United States. We launched Acqua dell'Elba US, the branded e-commerce site built specifically for the United States, in mid-2017 with a single email newsletter to 750 email addresses collected by the manufacturer's Italian website. The response to that email far exceeded our hopes, and it was clear from the start that something very special was happening with those people who already knew the brand. And in one instance, a customer had kept an empty glass diffuser jar for 3 years, just waiting for the time she could purchase a refill either here in the United States or on a future return trip to Italy. For us, it was a very powerful statement. And the results that we have seen in the last 2.5 years with our branded e-commerce site exceed almost every key metric used to evaluate the performance. The clearest illustration of the success of our direct-to-consumer business is the ratio of the profit from an acquired customer to the cost of acquiring that customer. Currently, for us, and this is using 2.5 years of data, that ratio of customer lifetime value to customer acquisition cost is about 75 to 1, meaning we can expect $75 of profit over the lifetime of a customer's purchases with us for every $1 that we have spent to acquire that online customer. Now, for perspective, the industry benchmark and something that is considered to be good would be a 3 to 1 ratio. We exceed that by 25-fold. But what is particularly remarkable about the results is that in 2.5 years, ADE Imports, as the distributor, has spent $4,000 for digital advertising to support aquadell'elba.us. Not $4,000 per month or even per year. That's $4,000 total in 2.5 years. And this is for an e-commerce site that is now approaching $500,000 in sales in that time. So how did we get there? Like so many things, especially those related to Italy, it begins with the heart. And over the next 25 minutes, we'll talk about the 5 things that you'll look for on your path to the United States that can help you make sure that you are following a profitable and successful course to get there. Every American who visits Italy falls in love with someone, someplace, or something. Now, that's not a new idea. In fact, it's one that was captured perfectly in a commercial from Barilla over 10 years ago.
It doesn't look like we have the sound on that, unfortunately, Brett, but you can see the images.
All right. Well, we will share a link for the commercial if we don't have the audio. And but the commercial portrays what is the most typical view of Americans when it comes to Italy. The country is beautiful, the lifestyle is beautiful, the people are beautiful. And in the commercial, what the sister who is visiting to Italy finds this beautiful place, finds these wonderful products, and finds this beautiful person with whom she starts to fall in love. And while that's a little bit of a cliched view of the relationship, to be sure, that powerful emotion is the single biggest reason behind Acqua dell'Elba's performance in the United States, and it represents a unique opportunity for Italian brands like yours. So what we've concluded is that it is possible for you as a brand to initially launch and grow in the United States by starting your acquisition of American customers at home in Italy. And so one question every small or new beauty brand faces when launching in the US is, how do you compete for customers here against giant competitors? And the answer we discovered is simple: don't. Instead, embrace this idea of reaching new customers in ways and in places that they cannot, and use the natural advantages that you have. Every year, there are 5 million American visitors to Italy. There are 30,000 American university students studying in Italy every year, and there are 200,000 Italian expats that live in the United States. And so from among that 5.25 million people you have as an initial target audience, we're going to show you that it takes actually a very small percentage of those to begin to build a successful business. But just like any marriage, love is not necessarily enough. And so the exposure Americans have to the brand in Italy, it significantly lowers the cost of acquiring customers for US e-commerce businesses, but it also is consistent with some of the key trends that we see among the kinds of US consumers who would be attractive to any brand. So while they may fall in love with you in Italy, part of the reason they're falling in love and introducing new products into their life matches these greater trends that we have. Women, professionals, people without children, couples, the use of a passport has now become a valuable social currency for these people. Something that Europeans, I think, take for granted compared to us in the United States is that international travel for Americans is still a relatively new thing. And the percentage of Americans who don't even have a passport is staggeringly high, considering the size of the country. And so as more and more Americans leave the United States, finding new products, the places where they've traveled, bringing them back to introduce them into their daily lives is something that they consider to be a luxury, and is something that demonstrates to other people their worldliness and their evolution as an American. And this increased preference for high quality products with sustainable, clean ingredients, as a complement to a lifestyle that has a greater emphasis on experience and wellness, is a perfect fit for the overall idea and brand equity that Americans have with the idea of made in Italy. And they also have a greater interest in the origin story and the founders of these new brands and products. And they're always looking for companies demonstrating values aligned with their own in a very authentic way. And it's something that we've discovered that with Acqua dell'Elba has been very successful and indicates to us that it could be successful for others as well. So one of the things that I might recommend that you read is a book called Trading Up, The New American Luxury. And it does a very good job of explaining how American consumers are evolving their views on what they consider to be luxury. Luxury is not necessarily just the price that someone pays or the classification of a product, but because it is from another country, because it is something that they have discovered on their travels, spending a little bit of extra to have that be a part of their daily life is something that they consider to be a luxury worth spending for. So even though the exposure that they have in Italy reduces the cost of acquiring customers for your US e-commerce business, how do we turn the exposure in Italy into profitable sales in America? For Acqua dell'Elba, that exposure has come in one of three primary ways. The brand has display advertising in airport terminals and gate areas. They've placed products in luxury hotels, as well as very visible mono-brand shops in key tourist destinations. And while this wasn't the intent of these marketing plans, they were intended to support their business in Italy, they have also opened this door to introducing the brand to new American consumers. So that brings us to the next formation on our navigational star chart, and one that represents the change in where Americans search for new products and how they shop when they find them. While in the past, it may have been that Americans would go to the shopping mall to begin their search for new products. At the US Beauty Summit, one of the presenters suggested that retail is not dead, and that may be true, but the most valuable retail space is now the one that is open all day, every day, and lives in the hands and the minds of American consumers. But even if you have a branded e-commerce shop open all day, every day, that doesn't matter if your potential customers can't find you. And while in the past, they would have started that search at a shopping mall, looking in a physical retail space, now they start looking in one of two places. Their search begins on Google or Amazon. But it's important to understand that the customer who searches for you on Google can be very different than the one who searches on Amazon for the exact same product. And because our focus is on growing through branded e-commerce, we'll set Amazon aside for today. Selling on Amazon presents its own challenges. It may not be a good choice for every brand, but every brand will need its own branded e-commerce site. So the simple truth is that there are already potential customers in the United States looking for your brand right now. And for them to find you, appearing on the first page of Google results is a must. Your brand's ability to get customers to search specifically for your brand will be a major factor in helping to reduce your customer acquisition cost. For acquadell'elba.us, we can say that almost all of the search traffic, both paid and unpaid, comes from searches that include the brand name. And that's approximately 500 to 600 searches per month in the United States. So 500 to 600 searches per month out of a universe of 5.25 million people starts to look like something that is very manageable, even for the smallest brands. But as important as customer acquisition cost and making sure that that is lowered and as low as can be, The other side that is important in balancing your cost ratio between customer lifetime value and customer acquisition cost is the operational model that you choose to use for your new US-based business entity to help launch here. Starting to do business in a new market is intimidating, no doubt, when you have no existing sales and marketing capability in that market. But the cloud makes it possible for you to create an entire distribution and e-commerce business that requires no physical presence in the United States. And it immediately gives you the ability to ship to any address or retailer in the United States and can be managed by one person from a mobile phone. And I'm going to show you the exact operating and financial model that you can use to do that. At its most basic, when you think about your plan to operate an e-commerce business for the United States, you have to be able to do 5 things to have a viable business. And while that may sound simple, and the things themselves may sound simple, when you're doing them in a new market, it can become exponentially more difficult. But when facing a large challenge, it can be easy to lose sight of the fundamentals of what you need to do. And you need to be able to accept orders, process payments and put money in the bank, ship orders, fix orders, and retain customers. So how does all of this work? How do you get to a point where you can operate a virtual e-commerce and distribution company in a new market without the physical presence of any people and be able to do so from a mobile phone? Well, the fact is that the computers have decided that they want to do the work for us. So let them. And if you do, you can reap the cost benefits of low fixed cost software subscriptions that require little upfront investment and can grow with you instantly. Everything you need to build a financial and operating plan for your new e-commerce business in the United States and capable of producing similar results is here in this diagram. Now, this may look a little bit confusing, but there are a couple of things for you to understand. If you look on the left side, you'll see virtual US distribution company, and for the purposes of today, we'll call it Beauty Made in Italy Incorporated. Now, fully owned by your parent company in Italy, this is the hub for your new business here in the United States. My recommendation is to start that with a dedicated US e-commerce site. And that is really the central platform on which everything else about your US business can be built. So, what does it cost to do this, and how do the financials work? The green arrows that you see on the screen are indicative of where money flows from one place to the other. And so as you begin to build a pro forma or sample profit and loss statement or profit and loss plan for this new business, using this diagram, you can identify exactly where the costs will go as you begin to operate. The gold arrows are the flow of goods. And one of the central key factors in being able to execute this kind of a strategy or execute this kind of a business model is having a third-party fulfillment and warehousing partner in the United States. It is probably the most important decision that you will make in the United States because this is the partner who will be responsible for making sure that your orders are shipped in a timely, professional, and beautiful fashion. So as you ship goods from Italy to your warehousing partner in the United States, all of that information on inventory is held there and connected to both you in Italy and your e-commerce platform for the United States to begin this cycle of automation and begin to sync data between sources that make it much more efficient for you to run the business in a way that gives you high margins and profitability. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see those 5 capabilities that we talked about earlier, and each of them represented by a specific software program or a specific software app that will deliver that capability. All told, the fixed monthly overhead costs for the applications necessary to give you those 5 minimum capabilities is around $1,000 per month. So that means more of your launch investment goes towards that advertising spending, and the initial advertising being on Google Ads and Bing Ads. And this picture gives you the minimum viable business for you to get started in the United States. Now, it took us 4 years to get to the point where we understood exactly how to squeeze the most efficiency out of our business for Acqua dell'Elba, distributing it here in the United States. If we were to work with a new company with products that are ready for market, my estimate is that we could have a business like this set up for you in the United States within about 4 months. So it's fast, it's efficient, and it is far less expensive as an investment for you to get started than you may have expected. And that's really the advantage of this direct consumer model. Now, there's a lot that goes on behind this diagram, but if you take a moment later on to look at it, I think the picture will be clear on how do the goods get here, how do they get to your customers, how is the money collected, how do we market to them, how do we service them, and ultimately, how do we build a lifelong relationship with them. So next up on our star chart is the idea of service. And that service is represented by the ubiquitous chat bubble that you see on e-commerce sites all around the world. And as important as good acquisition tactics and operational efficiency realized in the cloud may be to helping profitability in the short term, our ultimate goal is to create customers who will make many purchases over time in order to maximize customer value. And to do that, it requires excellent customer service based in the United States and a commitment to replicating the most important elements of the brand experience that caused people to first fall in love in Italy. It's so important, in fact, that I personally handle every single customer service email, chat, and phone call that we receive for Acqua dell'Elba US. And it is the last responsibility that I will relinquish as the business grows, because I personally feel that there is no one better in the United States to speak and be an ambassador on behalf of this brand than I am. And being the person who can make decisions that make people happy and keep customers coming back is the most important thing I have in my job. So for Acqua dell'Elba, it means that we pack every single order in the same aquamarine shopper bags, tied with the same ribbon and wrapped in the same tissue paper that you would see in all of the monobrand stores throughout Italy. And it makes a huge impact on customers to be able to have that same experience that they had in Italy show up at their doorstep with every order. And so what that has translated to for Acqua dell'Elba in the US are incredible reviews from our customers, most of whom specifically mention one of 4 things: that they found the brand in Italy, the excitement of now being able to buy that in the US and not have it shipped from Italy, have the customer service also based here in the US, the service that they receive, and the appreciation for the care with which each box is packed and shipped. These are all relatively small things in the big scheme of running an import business, But what we've discovered is that those elements, those touch points, are where that advantage that companies have from Italy that others don't. The beauty, the quality, the excellence of the products and the way that they are presented through the packaging is so unique to what you do. And so finally, we get to the last constellation, so to speak, that will guide you to America, and that's the flame. And we use the flame not only because of its connection to the Statue of Liberty, which obviously has greeted millions of Italians coming to the United States, but it's representative of the virtuous cycle that can be created by acquiring customers at a low cost, thanks to brand exposure in Italy, serving them well to make them fall deeper in love, and creating a long stream of purchases in the future. To start and maintain that cycle and maximize this ratio of customer value to acquisition cost, you need to ensure that you have plans in place to track how you are doing in these three areas before, during, and after the purchase. This is a concept that's often referred to as the purchase funnel. And so as you begin to build your US e-commerce experience, these are the areas I would prioritize your time and investments. Based on our experience with Acqua d'Elba and feedback from retail buyers speaking at the Beauty Summit last month, I can confidently say to you that the experience and understanding of your customers that will come from focusing first on your e-commerce business will allow you to make a far more compelling case to retailers. Retailers simply will not take a chance on a brand that cannot demonstrate existing demand here or an active English language social media effort targeted at US consumers. Because as a retailer, these are the people that they would look to for the initial demand and to move product off of their shelves at physical locations. And without that, there's really no incentive for a buyer to give you that opportunity. And so I hope that using the things that we've shown you here today, you'll see a market entry strategy that is easier to execute and will get you to profitability sooner than a retail first strategy. So, to wrap up, how do we navigate the most profitable path to America? Here are the 5 things that you need to remember. Made in Italy is an incredibly powerful set of words for American consumers, especially those consumers visiting Italy. Second, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Consumers will make very quick judgment based on what they see from your brand when they search. A brand that does not have a good search presence or attractive e-commerce site aimed at US shoppers will struggle to be successful here. The third thing, let the computers do the work. Business lives in the cloud, and it is now possible to knit together software services that allow you to build the capabilities you need to take orders, process payments, ship the orders, fix orders if there are a problem, and then make those customers keep coming back for more. And it is incredible how efficiently they do it and how productive it can make the person that you have managing this business. Fourth, American consumers have very little patience for poor customer service, but they will reward those with good service and a good buying experience with loyalty and, most important, recommendations to others. This idea of social proof is a very important one. So reviews from your consumers carry a lot of weight with other people who visit your shop and may be looking to buy you for the first time. And finally, if you execute all of these things well, you will benefit from this virtuous cycle of sales and profit that can then be used to help your brand grow like wildfire. that profit that you make because of the high margins and the efficient operating model of e-commerce will help your investment in growth. And in the reverse scenario, where you were to focus on retail first, my estimation and my experience tells me that you will likely spend as much money in the first year just trying to get your first meeting with a large retail buyer. And for the same amount of money, you could have established and grown an e-commerce business that is creating cash flow that you can use to reinvest in the business or to simply take back to Italy as profit for your company. One of the things that all of the brands that we work with and that we talk to will have to confront at some point as they think about coming to America is, how big do we really want to be? And for some smaller family-owned businesses, this is particularly a difficult challenge, I think, because oftentimes the pressure or the expectation in America is grow, 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 and become as big and powerful as you can be. But for many of you, that may not be your business model. That may not be what you desire for your company. And it is an equally valid choice strategically for you to commit to building an easily operated, profitable e-commerce business of a modest size that simply creates profit for your business. And using the things that we've shown today, using this operating model and these principles as you begin to plan your launch, a direct-to-consumer strategy will significantly limit your risk of loss. And I believe, and it has been proven with my experience with Acqua dell'Elba, is that you're more likely to be profitable faster doing it that way. So that's the summary points that we'd like to make to finish the presentation today and help you really understand 5 easy concepts to keep in mind as you create your plans. So as I mentioned,
I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So as I've mentioned, this has been a 4-year journey that we have been on to bring Acqua dell'Elba to market, and now have established it very firmly as a successful and profitable e-commerce business that will do nothing but contribute to the brand's growth over time. And so I want to say thank you to several people who have helped get us to this point where we can now share these best practices and share this learning with other brands who have great future potential here in America. So first and foremost, I want to thank the founders and the staff of Acqua dell'Elba and the people of Marcina Marina. They have been tremendous partners in this journey, and it is, I have so much respect and admiration for what they've created and the way they meticulously maintain their brand's authenticity, even as it grows around the world. And I think that's something that many of you can emulate, is that as you grow, continue to do the things that make your brand special. Second, I'd like to thank Tea Maffei. Tea is one of those people from Marcina Marina whose help in this project has been invaluable for me. She's a recent university graduate living in London. She speaks 3 languages, and anyone looking to add someone to their team would be well served to speak to her about doing that. Of course, I want to thank Meredith, everyone with the ITA. I think this program that they have created for these brands is tremendously helpful. And I know that for the brands in the incubator and the accelerator program, for many of you, you're at the point where it's time to get to market. And I hope that what we've shared with you today will help you do that. The Italy America Chamber of Commerce, any company starting to do business here, you should ensure that you make a connection with them. They've been incredibly helpful. Expedite Fulfillment is my preferred third-party logistics partner. They handle all of the warehousing and order fulfillment for our brands. Chris Jennings of European Solutions and Liz Scott of EC Scott Both have been invaluable resources to understand different retail channels and how to prepare a retail distribution strategy. And anyone considering coming to the United States should look up those two people and try to speak with them and get their perspective on what this journey is like as well. Kelly Hyatt has done incredible work with us over the course of the project in too many areas to count. And I want to thank and recognize Dr. Luca Pambino of Ripar Cosmetici, one of the brands enrolled in the Beauty Made in Italy program. We have recently begun to work with him and his brand with their US e-commerce business, and he would be an excellent resource for other manufacturers who want to understand about the legal and regulatory aspects of establishing a business entity here in the US, meeting the packaging and FDA requirements here, and just overall what they can expect launching an e-commerce business for their brand here. And the final acknowledgement that I have is for Peter Siss. He is the author and illustrator of the book that inspired the visuals in today's presentation. The name of that book, Follow the Dream, the story of Christopher Columbus. And of course, that book is available on Amazon.com. So thank you very much to all of you who have attended today. And Meredith, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect, Brett. Thank you so much. We have a couple questions here and they keep coming in. So just as a reminder, please post your questions in either the chat or the question function in the control panel. Number one, to start, the question is, how much should a company budget for warehousing or 3PL, and where in the US should they select a partner?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. When it comes to the 3PL, the monthly budget for that, you have two streams of costs. You have a fixed cost component, and that is simply the cost of keeping your goods in the warehouse, having your SKUs, having your data flowing through their computer systems, and just sort of overall account management. For us and Acqua dell'Elba, that's about $500 a month in fixed cost that we see. The other component of our monthly warehousing and 3PL cost is a variable cost, and that is based simply on the number of orders that we have every month. With every order, there are per order charges for packing and shipping. And so in a typical month for us, again, our total bill from 3PL is about $2,000 a month, but that includes both the fixed cost and the variable part of the cost. And as far as where, that depends. There are a couple of factors to consider. One is your strategy on shipping cost. American consumers think that shipping is something that has just simply been given to them by the gods, and that they shouldn't have to pay anything for it. And so depending on your category, depending on your competition, offering free shipping may be something that you need to consider. In that case, then you need to consider what is the optimal place in the country from which to ship your goods to reach customers. So you'll find a lot of 3PL providers in the Midwestern part of the United States, because there is some efficiency in being able to reach all parts of the country from the Midwest. However, my 3PL choice is here in the Boston area because I want to be close to it. And secondly, because some of the cost, or a big part of the cost for me bringing Acqua dell'Elba into the United States, is the freight cost from Europe to the United States. And so for me, I don't want to ship any further into the United States than I need to. So I want to get the product here, get it in a warehouse, and then my customers, we do not offer free shipping. So my customers pay full shipping price on their orders. And so whether it ships from Boston or whether it ships from the Midwest, the cost is really the same for me. So there are also considerations as to whether your product can be shipped through the Postal Service. We ship alcohol-based products, which the Postal Service does not like. So we use UPS and FedEx ground. And so there are several variables that sort of go into how to make those choices. But for the number of orders and the size of the business we are, about $500 in fixed cost, about $2,000 in cost every month.
Perfect. That's very helpful. Excuse me. The next question is, when starting to launch in the US, how do you estimate how much product to ship over?
That is probably one of the biggest, I mean, I won't call it a risk, but it's honestly a question that I don't know has an answer. I think I would look to, I would look maybe at 3 to 6 months of inventory, and what constitutes a month of inventory, is something that someone with experience like mine, it can help you forecast. You may, look to, what your e-commerce business in Italy or in Europe does, or sort of what a typical wholesale or retail account that you have. That is inventory management has been is one of the biggest challenges, particularly at the start, because you're right, we don't know how much to send over. And I think, as a manufacturer, you kind of just have to put make a mark in the sand and say, this is how much of each SKU or each product we're going to send over. And in the worst case scenario, if it doesn't sell, then it can be shipped back to Italy. And again, depending on the nature of your commodity, there'll be a wide variety of potential costs involved with that. Or in the worst of all scenarios, it can be liquidated here in the United States. But that very much is a judgment call, and one of the more difficult things to forecast for sure.
Great. And the next question is, Sid, it seems from your the slide that had all of the let's say diagram on it, but you suggest working with Shopify as your preferred partner for e-commerce?
That is the platform that I use. I find it to be, believe it or not, I'm not an incredibly technical person, and so I find their system very intuitive, and it has been successful for me. But it's not to say that any of the other Magenta or BigCommerce or other platforms can't be can't be as effective. I just happen to use Shopify for mine. And I will say that depending on the commerce platform that you use currently in Europe or in Italy, if you have an e-commerce business there, that infrastructure that supports your business there in a lot of cases can be modified very quickly and easily to also service the United States. So it's kind of an individual case by case basis of whether it would be best for you to use a different e-commerce platform than you use in Europe, or if your platform in Europe has the functionality to manage multiple markets at the same time in different languages, then that would put you even further along in terms of getting that business established, and will lower your costs.
Wonderful. The next question is, how is this arrangement different than a traditional distributor?
The primary difference is that you, as an Italian company, own the entity in the United States. That entity owns the inventory, is responsible for all of the costs, compared to a distributorship, which in my case with Acqua dell'Elba, I act as a distributor. I use this business model, but I'm the one that owns the inventory. I import it. I'm responsible for forecasting, and ultimately responsible for profit and loss. It's each one has its advantages and disadvantages, but based on my experience, my recommendation is to establish your own legal entity, business entity here in the United States, and for you to own the inventory. Now, the management of the business in the United States, the operation of the business in the United States can certainly, and I would recommend, be outsourced, to a manager or someone, an e-commerce operator here in the United States. But that person works for you ultimately, instead of, when it comes to servicing and working with your account.
Perfect. And we have one last question, and it seems more of a comment. What about fake reviews? I've read recently, someone writes about Sunday Riley and the FTC getting in trouble for fake reviews on products.
Yeah, I mean, that's the advantage of your own branded e-commerce site is that you are able to moderate and see all of the reviews that come in for your products in most instances. So fake reviews have never been an issue for us on our branded site. Amazon, reviews on Amazon and in other places, I don't work with Amazon, so it's hard for me to say, but yes, I mean, fake reviews, can be an issue for a brand or for a product, but for your initial branded e-commerce site, I don't think it's something that merits a lot of concern.
Perfect, thank you. Well, that was our last question. Again, we are recording this session, and we'll share the recording and materials shortly. But we really want to thank you again, Brett, for sharing all of this amazing knowledge on how to launch your brand here in the US from a D2C perspective and your experience in e-commerce. I will follow up with the recording with Brett's contact information should you have any further questions. And we really appreciate all of your time and attention today. So thank you again, Brett, and we appreciate all of your knowledge and expertise in sharing with our companies.
All right, great. Thank you to all of you.
It is our pleasure. Take care.